Hello again, book lovers. Lies my teacher told me, everything your American history textbook got wrong by James W. Loewen, possibly, was an add to cart item on one of my shopping sprees. I love the idea of debunking history, as my decades-long dallying into it has shown me that it's very often badly taught, badly understood. Now you'll have noticed American in the title, so this may or may not be relevant to you. I'm not very up on North American history, so let's see how my student note version compares to what is actually taught in the schools and what Mr. Loewen suggests should be taught. Initially, one suspects that it's going to be a simple, everything they tell us is a white fascist conspirational lie, empire, etc. Well, I'm not saying that isn't an element of American history, and neither is Mr. Loewen, but neither is he saying that's all there is to it. I thought this was a pretty balanced book. A good start is a good start, and how about this? What do you know about Helen Keller? Well, that was the question our author put to me, and I gave the expected answer of, well, she was blind and deaf and she learned to talk. And then Mr. Loewen explains, well, you just left out the last 64 years of her life, when she became a very active speaker on behalf of socialist ideas. In fact, communist ideas. She was a supporter of the Soviet Union, which, to our author's credit, he side notes as this doesn't look so good these days. Fair enough. Let's go on to American Indians and who first populated the continent, where did they come from, etc., etc. Here I learned that there were Phoenicians in Great Britain before 600 BC. I checked that, and that seems probable rather than possible. And there's another assertion that Amerindians arrived in Holland in the year 60 BC, but there are no primary sources for this. Hark at me speaking like a historian. In any case, why do the Olmec heads correspond to the physiognomy of Negroid people? Or do they? Or are they just simply more like the local native population? This apparently is an ongoing controversy, and that's one of the angles that Mr. Loewen takes, is that history is alive, and what we tend to do is ignore what you might call living memory history and treat the other buried part of history as if it was there frozen in amber. Anyway, as you can already see, this is touching on very interesting themes, and it has me running away to Wikipedia and other reference sources, guarding the guardians, as it were. So, very challenging, very entertaining, and very instructive. Did you know, because I didn't, that the Conquistador Balboa ran across black slaves in an Indian town in Panama? How puny were Christopher Columbus's ships, really? Why did he falsify the mileages? That's an interesting side note. I mean, I'm recommending this book heavily, by the way. It keeps you on your toes, it's quite fascinating. Always maintaining a reasonable distance from events, psychologically, if I explain myself. Perhaps he does better. Page 64. Neither morality nor immorality can simply be conferred upon us by history. I like that. The next paragraph begins with, who are we? Who is the we that this book is addressed to? Well, in the case of an American textbook, obviously, it's addressed to American school kids. So they get the Helen Keller story, the Christopher Columbus story, the Thanksgiving story. I think Mr. Loewen missed one trick here, in that he didn't go into the etymology of colonizing, which comes from Christopher Columbus in its Spanish form. But there you go, that's nitpicking. Wouldn't it be good if the children and adolescents were encouraged to speculate about this? I get the impression that Mr. Loewen would love the dawn of everything, see relevant review, as it's throwing up a lot more of these interesting questions. I'm guessing that the author is of a sort of anarchist socialist bent and is asking to redress the teaching of history, tipping the seesaw more towards that side. Which is fair enough, isn't it, as long as it's not tipped completely over. On page 306, the author says, it's inappropriate to lay this particular bundle i.e. the bad teaching of history, on the doorstep of the upper class, to blame the power elite for what is taught in a rural Vermont school or an inner city classroom is too easy. If the elite is so dominant, why hasn't it also censored the books and articles that expose its influence in education? Paradoxically, critical theory cannot explain its own popularity. Any upper class worth its salt, so dominant and so monolithic that it determines how American history is taught in almost every American classroom, must also have the power to marginalise those social scientists who expose it. Sorry about the length of that excerpt, but it's paragraphs like this that cheer me up and give me confidence in an author. As we learn about Indians, how they helped build the famous Sutter's Fort, which was built to keep out Indians, but it's never mentioned that it was built by Indians, is one of his points. And, for example, did you know that during the Civil War there was an army of Indians, and they were dressed in Russian uniform, not explained why, and commanded in German, also not explained why. Lots of interesting snippets of history, though. The Pilgrims originally feared Indianization so much that they banned long hair. There's investigations of the legend of buying Manhattan for beads off the stupid Indians. Investigations of the Louisiana Purchase, where I learned about triracial isolates. Amazing. These are communities of native Indians, some escaped slaves and some white folk who just decided to band together and try to eke out a living, and so they did in some cases. There are lots of lovely footnotes to this large book, leading down lots of lovely rabbit holes, and along the way I learned a bit more of American history, the period known as the Nadir. I come across people I should have known about, like Sojourner Truth. I agree with the overall line of argument of the book. Fascinating treatment of John Brown. Was he a goodie? Was he a baddie? Was he mad? And a brilliant comparison of two of John Brown's portraits taken from different periods of his life. And guess which one they used to illustrate the books with, etc., etc. Is the whole edifice a lie? Well, Mr. Loewen points out lies which can be proven to be lies. He extracts paragraphs from history books and does the debunking with facts and references and sources. And as I say, despite my not being particularly interested in the American Civil War, when you take the sweep of the history of the North American continent, it's as fascinating as anywhere else. And if you're passionate about the teaching of history and you are in America, you might take heed of the star endorsement, which is at the top of the front cover, by Howard Zinn. Every teacher, every student of history, every citizen should read this book. Well, fair enough. I'm guessing, and as the author himself recognises from back in 1995, when he first wrote it, I'm guessing that things are getting better. The copy that I read is from 2018, so I'm 6 years along the line, and I kind of think the pendulum's almost swung the other way, and history is being bent in a different direction. I wonder if somebody with exactly this motivation today, whether they would have very different criticisms. I suspect they would, and I suspect the conclusion would be, okay, yeah, we are getting better in certain respects, but we're also tending towards certain false narratives in other aspects. I think I'll leave it like that.